All right, everybody, welcome back to Horn Takes. It's Friday. I love a good Friday. I used to love Friday during football season because obviously we're going to have a lot of football games the next day. Now I love Fridays because of Team Am. For those of you that don't know what Team Am is, which is probably every last one of y'all, it's just an acronym that I made up to sort of encapsulate my love for Tex-Mex and margaritas. So every Friday, my wife and I, we Team Am. And sometimes we Team Am outside of Friday. And I know that has nothing to do with sports, but this is the absolute worst time of the year for sports. College football's over. Signing day is come and gone, both of them. It's the annual Cowboys are out of the playoffs time of the year. College baseball hasn't started. All we're really left with, if you're a college sports fan, is college basketball. And I've said it before, I like college basketball. I like the March Madness, and I watch the Texas games as much as I can. But I wouldn't say I'm like a diehard college basketball fan. And I certainly am not an NBA fan. I think the NBA used to be really awesome when I was a kid, when you had Charles Barkley, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Isaiah Thomas, Hakeem Olajuwon. Those were the good NBA times. I think the NBA absolutely sucks today. But anyway, so what the hell are we going to talk about? So I knew I need to do some content, right? I need to put out some stuff for you guys. But I didn't know what the hell I was going to talk about. So I asked my wife last night, I said, what should I do on my podcast tomorrow? She said, talk about me. So I'll talk about her. I'll talk about my wife for a little bit. Number one, she's hot. That just goes without saying. Been married to my wife now 23 years. She always has let me do my sports stuff, which I think is almost as cool as her being really, really hot. And now that we're older and our kids are older, we do a lot of sports stuff together. We don't go to all the Texas games. We try to go to as many Texas games as we can. We live outside of Austin. And as a matter of fact, we don't live anywhere close to Austin. So it's a pretty good trip for us to get to Austin. It's a pretty good trip for us to get to Dallas. But we have gone to the Red River Shootout the last couple of years. We're season ticket holders. We've been down to Austin for a few games over the course of the last couple seasons. We went to Alabama last year, TCU last year, obviously the Red River Shootout last year. Year before that, we took in just one game down in Austin. We went and saw the Texas Tech game. We went over to the Red River Shootout. And we turned these into really nice getaways. So for us, for me, not only is it like an awesome trip to go watch football, but we turn it into a weekend. We eat good food, have good drinks, and just kind of enjoy our kids being old. We're really planning on going to the Bama game this fall. Don't know if I'll be able to get tickets through the university, so that'll be – I have a feeling this is going to be a really highly anticipated ticket because I think obviously there's Alabama and then Texas. You look at their brands, just – brands aside, it's probably going to be another good game. Texas took Alabama right down to the wire last year. Man, that was a good game. That was a really fun game to be at. The outcome sucked, but the game itself was – it might have been one of the coolest games I've ever been to, and I've been to some pretty cool games. So I think both teams will be good. I think Texas will be better. I think you look at Alabama's roster, it's always good. I don't expect it to not continue to be good. So I feel like it's going to be a big deal. I know it's going to be a big deal because I can't find a hotel room anywhere in freaking Tuscaloosa that's not $1,500. I did find a room in Birmingham, which I think is 30 minutes, 45 minutes away from Tuscaloosa. But here's a funny story. I found an Airbnb or a VRBO, one of the two. I was looking on, I think it was VRBO. I was looking on VRBO. This was about 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago. And I found one. And well, I found a lot, obviously, but they're crazy price, like $1,900 a night, $2,200 a night. Well, I'm scrolling through and I find this one that's like $250 a night. I'm like, jackpot. So I click on it. I'm looking at it, and it is a quarter of a mile from the stadium. And so for me, I'm thinking, badass. We drive in, we park, and then we don't have to get back in the vehicle again until it's time to leave and go back to Texas, right? So I booked that shit. The very next day, I get a message from the owner or the whatever. I guess the man. I don't know if it's a property manager or the owner of the place, whatever. It's like a little condo, 2-bedroom, 2-bath deal. Looked fairly nice. And again, location, you can't beat it, right there by the stadium. So, and I assume there's stuff around the university, food and drink, stuff like that. So I thought, perfect. This will be the spot. Anyways, this lady messages me the next day and says, sorry, we didn't get a chance to update our prices before they went live with this listing. For your inconvenience, I can give you a 20% discount, but I'm going to either have to cancel this booking and you're going to have to rebook it for the other price, for the new price, or I can just add on the price of the booking, the additional cost as a fee or something like that. And I was like, this seems really shady. I don't do a lot of VRBO and I don't do a lot of Airbnb. In fact, I don't think I've ever stayed in an Airbnb or a VRBO, but regardless, it just rubbed me the wrong way. And I thought this seems kind of shady. So I messaged VRBO and I was like, are people allowed to are owners allowed to come back and ask for more money after after the deal is done, basically? And they said, no, they're not supposed to do that. And I said, well, is there anything you guys can do? Because this lady's trying to tell me I got to cancel my reservation, and I've already paid. Like, it's paid for. And he said, well, we can't do that, but if they cancel on it, they'll get some kind of punishment for it or whatever. And I was like, whatever. So I emailed this lady back, and I told her, or I messaged her back through the app. I said, it's kind of tacky to ask for more money after a transaction's been complete, and I think it's just bad business. And I said, I'm not going to cancel this, and I'm not agreeing to pay to any extra fees. And so as a couple days went by, and I thought, maybe I'm gonna get away with this. Maybe I'm not gonna have to. I'm gonna get this room, or we're gonna get this place, and it's gonna be for the deal that we paid for. And nope, that was not right. She finally did message me and said I went ahead and canceled the reservation. She was looking to get like $1,900 extra dollars out of me. I don't know. I see her point, but also at the same time, if I'm running a business, I'm going to make sure that I have the right price for the right weekend. So anyway, I still have a hotel room in Birmingham. That'll be what we have to do. Anyway, back to my wife and us traveling to games. The state fair has been a blast. We've enjoyed that a few times over the years. And we had a really good time last year. Obviously, we had a good time the year before at the state fair. Just the game itself just really put a kibosh on all the fun, right? Like you go in and you're kicking ass. What is it, 28-0, 21-0 in the first quarter? I don't even remember. It was a lot to nothing really fast in that game, and they just pissed it away. Basically ruined the whole trip. But that's the way it goes when you're a Texas fan, I guess. Speaking of Texas and OU, so back up. That's my wife. She's hot. She lets me do my sports stuff, and she goes with me to games. One thing we learned about each other this year is that my wife is a huge Cowboys fan, and she never really was that much of a Texas fan, I think, until she met me and we started dating and, all that. It's kind of how it goes. You kind of adopt your spouse's team within reason. All you people that are married to Aggies and Oklahoma Sooners and shit like that, I don't know how you do it. Anyways, but she's always been a huge Cowboys fan, and I've kind of been like, not a huge NFL guy. But what we've learned this year is we hate watching each other or hate being around each other while we're watching our team. So she'll, if we're at home, I'll sit outside and watch the game outside on the patio, and I'm losing my shit. She hates it. 9 times out of 10, she gets up and leaves because she can't deal with me. And then when Dallas is getting their ass kicked or whatever, it's really hard to watch with her because she's the same exact way I am. So anyway, I don't know. I can't turn any love on for Dallas, and I think she's got some love for Texas, but it's just not near the same passion I have. Anyway, Texas OU to the SEC. Report came out today, Pete Thamel tweeting that the 2024 talks have just kind of stalled out. So there was kind of some hope. So the whole deal comes out, and Texas and OU are joining the SEC. It's going to be 2025. There was a lot of hope amongst a lot of fans that maybe this season would be the year that they jump. And then when that didn't happen, there was a whole lot of hope that, okay, maybe 2024 will be the season where Texas and OU can jump. But I knew the Big 12 was always going to be shitty about this. And I knew that Fox obviously has got a ton of money tied up in this whole thing. I knew they weren't going to budge easily. It's going to cost a lot of money for Texas and OU to get out of the Big 12 and get over to the SEC early. I did maybe think that with this new playoff piece, with the playoffs expanding in 2024, that and with the Big 12 already signing a new deal, there's just a kind of these things in place where you thought maybe, yeah, they'll figure this out. And I think a lot of people thought they would figure it out here very recently. Chip Brown, Horns 247, was reporting the other day that he thought it was getting close, like a deal was kind of imminent, and then bam, this morning Pete Thamel saying things have stalled out. There's a lot of people talking about, oh, this is just negotiation tactics. I don't understand why anybody would think that. The information that's being put out there is not pointing the finger at one side or the other. And it's not like you're leaking stuff to make the other side look bad. Everybody knows what's going on here. The Big 12 is pissed off that Texas and OU were leaving, which they should be. I'm not picking sides there, but they're pissed off about that. And so they're going to do everything they can do to hold them. Fox is going to do everything they can do to hold them. They've got all the leverage. Texas and Oklahoma have basically no leverage. They're just trying to get out, right? And ESPN has some leverage from a money perspective, but they don't want to overpay by a year, right? Like they're getting them in 2025. Why would ESPN pay a shit ton of money to get them out of their deals with Fox and the Big 12 and get them over to the SEC just one season early? Now, if you'd have told me 2022 they were going to try to do that, or 2023 they were going to try to do that, it might make sense. But the bottom line is the Big 12 and Fox, they have no incentive to let Texas and Oklahoma go cheaply. So it's going to take a lot of money from ESPN to Fox and maybe to the Big 12. I don't really know, how all that stuff works on the back end, but it's going to take an enormous amount of money to get Oklahoma and Texas. I've always said 2025. I always said I don't think there's any way that Texas and Oklahoma are going to be wearing an SEC patch any earlier than 2025. And I don't know. Things can always change. Just as quickly as things change from the day before to this morning, they could change back in the blink of an eye. We'll see what happens. One thing I wonder about is recruiting for Texas and Oklahoma. I think, obviously, Texas and Oklahoma moving into the SEC was a kind of probably a big recruiting boost for both of those programs. I think it's a positive thing for Venables and Sarkisian to be able to go into a young man's room, go into his house and say, hey, man, come to Texas or come to Oklahoma, you're going to get to play in the SEC. And that's a big deal for a lot of kids. I mean, it's hard to argue with. People look at it like, kids will look at it and say, all these NFL players come from the SEC. And it's not because they were in the SEC, in my opinion. It's because they're really good football players. And there's a lot of good football players in the South, and that's where the SEC is. So a lot of really good football players go to SEC schools. But I wonder how much a year of this maybe hurts recruiting. I don't know. I think it's probably negligible. I think it'll probably manifest in at least one or two kids between Oklahoma and Texas over the next year. But I don't think it's going to be a huge sort of issue for Texas or Oklahoma regarding recruiting. But it could be. Let's talk about Duce Robinson. So we talked about Duce Robinson a little bit right before National Signing Day. We had Mike Roach from Horns 247, recruiting analyst and author. We had him on the show, I don't know, last week, I think, maybe the week before, talking about recruiting, 2023 class, what to look forward to. And then there's always been this piece about Duce Robinson, how he's going to be a February signee and all this stuff. Well, and by the way, if you don't know who Duce Robinson is, he's a 5-star tight end out of Phoenix, Arizona, and he's kind of like a generational type dude. 6'6", 225. He's got a lot of speed, a lot of talent. Really good tight end process. He's the type of guy that he probably needs some work on, like blocking and sort of traditional tight end things. But as far as pass catching goes, he's a nightmare from a matchup perspective for defenses. So he's like a guy that you can use all over the field, and you can certainly, even though he's probably behind the curve on blocking, and it'll take him some time to develop that. He's certainly the type of guy you can build a package of plays around and go kick some ass. So he's that good. He's the number one tight end in the country, number one player in the state of Arizona. Right now, it's looking really solid, like he's going to Georgia. I think Georgia and USC are maybe 1A, 1B, and then you got Texas at 2, maybe Oregon at 2, 3, 2B, something like that. It really looks like it's coming down to 3 teams that have a legitimate shot, and that's Georgia, USC, and Texas. And it's been like that for a while. But the interesting thing is about Duce Robinson is he announced, I think it might have been the day before or the morning of National Signing Day, and just said, I'm not signing until later. And there's a lot of reasons why he's not going to do that. I think one of the bigger, probably overlooked things, maybe a lot of people don't know about Duce Robinson, is he is also like a top 40 high school prospect type guy in baseball. He's an outfielder. So yeah, a really good baseball player. And the thought was, I think from at least, and this may be how Texas kind of got into the recruiting mix in the first place, was, man, Texas got a really good baseball program. Georgia, not so much. USC has tradition, but they haven't been good in a while, and their facilities are trash from what I understand. They're not putting a lot of money into that program. But Texas had sort of this mix of baseball and football. But now hearing that this guy's a top 40, baseball prospect, it could be that he's just going to go sign a Major League Baseball contract or sign a baseball contract and play football on the side. Kind of like Ricky Williams did at Texas, where I think he signed with the Phillies, and the Phillies paid for all his school. So technically, Ricky Williams was never on scholarship at the University of Texas. Duce Robinson will probably do something similar, but who knows? I definitely feel like the key to his commitment is baseball. But whether it goes against you or for you because you have baseball and he's interested in that, or whether it's a situation where he's like, no, I'm just going to sign a professional. Honestly, I don't see how a guy that's a top 40 high school prospect doesn't sign a contract. I think he'll get paid pretty well. He's still going to be able to get NIL through football. My gut tells me this dude is going to wind up at Georgia, and why wouldn't he? We've talked about that before. Georgia utilizes the tight ends a lot, and they've had great success with those guys. Bowers is, everybody's talking about how he might be one of the best players in the country, and I don't necessarily disagree. He's super athletic, and I think Duce Robinson is that type of guy. So anyway, we'll see, man. I've heard he may not sign until, and I guess if you're not getting a scholarship, I don't know if you're getting a scholarship or not. Like, if you're not getting a scholarship, I don't know if you have to even sign a letter of intent. Not sure how all that works. I mean, I think we've talked about this before too. I think the national letter of intent is a joke because you can get out of it so easily. So anyway, but I think this guy will decide if he hasn't already decided. But I feel like he's probably only taking this time to see what happens with the draft or the MLB draft and to see kind of where he stands with that. I think that'll have a huge determining factor on what he does, obviously, and then maybe what school he goes to. If he decides, maybe it comes closer to draft time and they say, you're like a third or fourth round dude, which is still really high in baseball because there's like 975 freaking rounds of the draft. But if he doesn't get drafted very high or he's not projected to get drafted very high, he may very well just say, you know what, I want to go to Texas. I want to play baseball at Texas and I want to play football at Texas. If he goes really, really high, maybe he ends up at Georgia or USC. I think today, if I'm picking, if I got to put money on it, this guy's going to Georgia. And I would say if he doesn't wind up at Georgia, that USC's got to be the number 2, right? I think Texas is a close third, but I don't know. We'll see. Crazier things have happened. Him leaving it open like this just leads to more recruitment by these schools. So we'll see if Steve Sarkisian might be able to close on Duce Robinson. That'd be amazing. There's another guy, Warren Roberson, is a defensive back that's been committed to TCU for a pretty good while. Texas got in on him late, got him to come to Austin for a visit. He did not sign on Wednesday because of a lot of the weather in Texas, and I believe they pushed his. Let's back up from that. He might have actually signed. Nobody knows officially yet where he's going at this point. I mean, he does probably. His parents do, but you know what I'm saying. It could be that he signed his letter of intent and the school knows that he's coming and he just hasn't announced it yet. Because of all the weather, they kind of pushed it out till it was supposed to be today, and then I think they went ahead and pushed it out to Tuesday. So we should find out on Warren Roberson on Tuesday. Texas people feel like they're in a really good spot with him. So we'll see. Next topic on what the hell are we going to talk about? This comes up all the time, like worst fan bases. Like, who are the worst fan bases? And I got to admit, I'm a Texas fan, obviously. A lot of fan bases hate Texas fans, and I don't disagree with those people. I don't begrudge them for hating Texas fans. Texas people in general, and I'm just talking the state of Texas people, are very sort of arrogant and proud and just different. Like when I joined the Army, my basic training was at Fort Knox, Kentucky. And there was a couple of guys from Texas, but there was guys in my platoon from all over the place. New York, South Carolina, the Midwest, Missouri. And what I found interesting is they just didn't really have the same type of pride in their states that Texas people have. It's just something that, I don't know. It's just not kind of like the way of life there. And in Texas, it really is. Most of you folks are probably from Texas. If you're listening to this, you're proud to be a Texan. You're one of those. Most people from Texas are like, man, Texas can live on their own. We don't need the United States and all that crazy shit. So I get it. And then you put them in the mix with their sports teams and they're freaking ridiculous. And then I know we got Aggies down there. So like, I don't blame anybody for hating Texas fans and Texas Longhorn fans. But I'm going to talk to you guys about who I feel like the worst fan bases are. And I'm not going to talk bad about my fan base anymore. So one is any fan base that's having like some unexpected success. I'm talking Kentucky last year. So Kentucky, I don't even remember what their record was. They were something in O. And all of a sudden, these guys started coming out of the woodwork about how they had a chance at the SEC and they were going to do this and they were going to do that. And, man, you saw them pop up on social media. Just fucking ridiculous. Like, just the stuff they would say. And they acted like they have been at the pinnacle of college football for years. And they're like 5-0 or 4-0 or whatever the case may be. I think you saw a little bit of that with Tennessee this year. Tennessee is obviously a better traditional power than Kentucky in football. And I know these folks in Tennessee have been like just yearning. I mean, I know what it's like to yearn. I'm still yearning over here as a Texas fan. But these Tennessee folks have been yearning and yearning to be good. And the problem is when you do that and you start to see some success all of a sudden, you like lose your mind. You go from probably, like the Eeyore, everything's gonna go bad. We suck. It's just the way it is. You go to like from that state mentally to like this state where you refuse to even acknowledge that there's a chance your team isn't as good as they appear to be at that time. Like you just ignore all the negative things that are happening on the field that you can see right there on the field every single game. You ignore that stuff because at the end of the day, you won the game, right? And you continue to win these games. And I think Tennessee fans, man, when they beat Alabama, they lost their shit, man. They completely went off the rails. And the reason I hate that is because, man, you're just like, I mean, I don't guess I hate it, but it makes you the worst fan base because you're not being real with yourself. And I'm like a huge fan of just like addressing the situation and saying this is the way it is. There's some good, there's some bad, and I think that shows up in my discussions on Texas football pretty frequently. Another fan base was TCU, man. TCU fans like were legitimately talking shit to just basically anybody in Texas about football. And I'm sitting here going, I mean, I get it. Like you're undefeated, you're having a really good season. But dude, you're TCU. Like you haven't done shit in forever. You were 4-7 last year. I don't know. It might just be me, but that kind of crap rubs me the wrong way. If your team is having great success, be humble. Like, because it may not last. And you're going to look real stupid if you talk all this shit. Just like all these Tennessee fans last season. Man, again, just like Kentucky the year before, they came out of the woodworks and they're talking all this shit. And then, bam, Georgia, like, dropped a freaking bomb on their ass. And now you look like a dumbass because you've been running your mouth about all this shit. And you knew in the back of your mind you were wrong and it wasn't going to happen. I don't know. USC fans, y'all are number 2. I honestly feel like there is no such thing as a USC fan. And I know for the 10 USC legit diehards that are out there in the world that will probably never hear this podcast, but if you do, I'm not talking about you. You guys that show up, no matter what the team's doing, which again, it's like 10 of them, 10 or 15 people, this isn't for you. But the rest of the USC fan base has got to be like the epitome of a freaking bandwagon. Like if you look up bandwagon fan in the dictionary, there's got to be like a picture of several USC fans to go along with that. They don't care about the game at all. They don't care about the team at all until they do something amazing. Like this year, they had a really good season. So now all of a sudden, USC, we're back, and we got Lincoln Riley, and we're back, and how many national championships are we going to win now, and all this bullshit. The answer is 0. That's the answer. You're not going to ever win any national championships with Lincoln Riley. SEC fans, and this one could have been number 1, and I'm not talking about fans of SEC teams. I'm talking about people that are like SEC fans. Like the people that chant SEC, SEC, SEC at football games. What is going on with that? I've talked about it a tiny bit before. I don't get that. I don't understand. Why are you rooting for a conference? It makes no sense to me. And you know what the deal? Like ESPN has done such a good job of convincing all these fans from the Southeast Conference that they're one and it just means more and all this shit. Like it wasn't even close to the day. I remember I was at a football game. I was at the Texas Tech football game 2 years ago in Austin. And I ordered, me and my friends, a bunch of SEC It Just Means More shirts. as a joke, but it's not a joke. Like those are legit shirts. Like you can go to freaking fanatics.com and there's an SEC page that's just SEC merchandise, not like a mug and like a t-shirt. There's like all kinds of crap. It's like a team. And so you got all these freaking morons that are fans of SEC teams that have no chance of ever winning any. Like their team is never going to win a championship ever in the SEC. They're certainly not winning a national championship. But they go around claiming like how great the SEC is. Oh, the SEC's won 16 of the last 18 national championships. SEC. Y'all are idiots. Probably the number one worst fans, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the rankings. Y'all all suck. So these next few are like personal for me, like not just national worst fans. And there's a lot of other worst fans. Like I think Ohio State fans are pretty bad. West Virginia fans are pretty rough. See what else. Those two for sure. But these are personal to me. Texas Tech Red Raider fans. So I live in Lubbock now. I moved here in 2015 for work, and we've been here ever since. You Lubbock people, you Texas Tech people, I don't understand y'all. I don't understand why you want to make everything a rivalry that's not a rivalry. They want Texas and Texas Tech to be so much of a rivalry that they just invent shit to get pissed off about, like the whole Chris Beard thing. When he went back to Lubbock last year, and man, let me also say this. People that live in Lubbock, most people in Lubbock are some of the nicest people you'll ever meet. Very friendly. I grew up in Northeast Texas. I lived in Central Texas a lot of my life, and right before we moved here to Lubbock. So they're like really nice people, but you get them in that stadium and they all lose their mind. It's like Jekyll and Hyde. So you got stuff like that. This whole, we're going to be pissed at Chris Beard and we're going to like riot when the Texas bus comes and then they're running out on the field and knocking Texas players down during the game. They're mouthy as shit. Like we were walking into I took my son to the game this year in Lubbock, and listen, I've never walked up to anybody in an opposing team's t-shirt at any stadium. Not in Austin at Darrell K. Royal. Not in the Cotton Bowl for the Red River Shootout. Not here in Lubbock. And I've been to several games here in Lubbock. Not anywhere have I ever walked up to someone at a sports event that's in the other team's colors and said a word to them. Never. I got more horns down in my face. I got more like just nasty talk. Second I got out of my truck, and this is not a lie, the second I got out of my truck at the parking lot, shut the door, we're walking away to go get on the bus, I hear some jackass behind me, Texas sucks. And I'm just like, what? Why do you think about Texas so much? Like, I'd never sit here and go, I can't wait till a Tech fan comes out so I can tell him Tech sucks. I don't know. Help me understand. It's just not a process that my mind goes through. And Texas Tech fans have just, ever since A&M left, they have pointed all that ire at Texas. And they want it to be a rivalry. And if you could just go look at the standings in any men's sport, it's just not a rivalry. Texas just does not care about Texas Tech the way Texas Tech cares about Texas. And I think that pisses Texas Tech fans off even more. Here's another thing you see here in Lubbock. I wear my orange stuff around. People on my block know I'm a Texas fan. And the people on my block, they don't mess with me. But if I go to Walmart or go to HEB or go to United to go grocery shopping, people look at me like I'm a freaking alien. And people have even come up to me, little kids, come up to me and said stuff to me for wearing a Texas shirt. And I'm like, dude, just root for your team. you don't have to like hate me because I'm not a Texas Tech guy. So anyway, Texas Tech fans, y'all are fucking crazy. Y'all need to get Texas out of your mind. Just stop. Next worst fan base, Texas A&M. And I don't think there's anybody that would disagree with this. If you've been around Texas A&M people, Texas A&M fans, you know what I'm talking about. They are wild. They're like a cult. It's legit a cult down in Aggie land. And you talk about delusional. Like we were talking about Tech fans a minute ago, and the whole, the Big 12 runs through Lubbock now talk. And I know that wasn't fans, it was their coach, but the fans bought into that for a couple weeks, man. Tech fans were like, yeah, we're going to win the Big 12. Like, no, you're not. Like ever. You're not ever winning the Big 12, Texas Tech. It's not going to happen. Same thing with these Texas A&M fans. They are absolutely delusional, and they're way worse delusion-wise. These guys, I think the best Texas A&M has ever finished in the SEC, in their division, was like 4th. But every single year they talk about how they're going to win it all, and this is our year to win the SEC. And man, there was a couple of years, these last couple of years, where you look at their roster and you go, yeah, they might actually have a chance. They've signed some good classes. They just figure out a way to not be good. But it doesn't matter. Texas A&M's always going to think that they're ready. This is their year. No matter what happens. We didn't hear a lot from Texas A&M fans this year just simply because how could you? That was like one of the most abysmal years ever. And if you take away some of these wins, like some of these wins against Bama that A&M has had, they've done absolutely nothing. Nothing since they moved to the SEC. Except like midnight yells and like milkman uniforms and all dude bands and stuff like that. I don't know. So that's my list of like worst fan bases. You might ask yourself, why is Oklahoma not on there? And to be perfectly honest, I don't have to be around Oklahoma fans a lot. I don't live in Oklahoma. The area of Texas I live in doesn't have very many Oklahoma fans. And at the very least, I can somewhat respect Oklahoma fans because their teams have actually done stuff. And for the most part, they can see both sides of the world, right? They can see we're really good, we're going to kick your ass side. And they can also see we're just not that good. I remember walking out of the Red River Shootout in 2005, and there was a lot of OU. I went by myself that year, and there was a lot of OU fans walking out around me, and they weren't trying to make excuses. They just said they lost. They just got beat by a better team. So the few interactions I have had with Oklahoma fans generally have not been that bad. There was a couple of jackasses before the game last year that just thought it'd be cool to run their mouths and all that stuff. So I wish I could have found them after the game, but I couldn't. So yeah, man, that's it. That's the worst fan bases in college sports right now. And that's the end of our show for today. We need baseball to start. Once baseball starts, I won't have to talk about my wife and worst fans in college football and ladies in Tuscaloosa that try to rip me off. Subscribe to the podcast. Just look it up on any podcast place. Horn Takes Podcast. You'll find it. YouTube channel. Click on the bell. Get those notifications. Subscribe there. TikTok, Twitter, Facebook. Some variation of Horn Takes. Horn Takes Podcast will find me. You guys can email me at horntakespodcast@gmail.com. Questions, comments, concerns, criticisms. I love them all. Hook 'em.